Hello everybody, I've got a few things that I wanted to review in vlog form anyway. Just because I'm lazy, I don't really want to edit stuff together, but it's probably best this way. But first, I'm sure most of you are curious about how my foot is doing, and truthfully, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell that it's hurt, because it's kind of in a sock. Actually, I could show you this. If you want to see my surgical scar, you can probably see it right there. But it really doesn't hurt. In fact, it really didn't hurt as soon as a week after the surgery. I stopped taking the Percocet like 3 or 4 days afterwards. I mean, I can't go dancing on it. It would hurt like a son of a bitch then. But, you know, as long as I stay off it, I'm generally pretty good. I wear this big boot whenever I'm walking anywhere significant. But otherwise, I kind of crawl between point A and point B, and I'm fine otherwise. But there are a few things. The one thing that has been kind of dominating most of my days, 2 or 3 days anyway, and I actually feel really guilty about it, is Star Trek Online. Somebody lent me their computer that had a beta of Star Trek Online on it, and so I got to playing that on their account. So the reason I feel guilty about it is because it's really not very good. And the first day I played it, I played it for about 3 or 4 hours. I had a few friends, and we kind of got together and played it, and I was severely underwhelmed. And the first question that is immediately raised is this just beta jitters? Like, everything has not been implemented yet. This is not the full production show that's going out. Am I being hard on it because it's a beta? And I thought that's a good point. I'll look at it from the point of view of, I'll look at it like a beta, because I did beta test a couple other games. I actually beta tested a while ago Ultima Online when it was that was like one of the first ever MMOs ever, and they were, the beta testing was actually really kind of startling and kind of adventurous, But anyway, I went back and I started doing Star Trek Online again, and no, it's really not very good. And there's a few ways you can look at it. You can compare it as a Star Trek fan. You can compare it just between other MMOs. And so let's play that game. Let's play it like we're comparing MMOs. And even in that regard, I think it's a real failure. First question that springs to mind is, will it compete in any fashion with the bigs, like World of Warcraft, of course? And again, it's probably unfair to ask that question, but maybe it's not, because that's always the question of anyone who's going to get into MMOs is, if I like World of Warcraft, will I like this? Or I don't want to get into World of Warcraft, but I want something good, something like that. And from beginning to end, from top to bottom, Star Trek Online is underwhelming. And it's hard to know where to start. I think where I was really underwhelmed was the sound design and music. The music is so bland and generic, other than the character selection theme. It might as well not be there. And in fact, in many cases, the music was completely inappropriate. There's these huge high-pitched battles going on, and the music is just kind of droning on at this very sedentary, exploratory rate, I don't think the graphics are anything to write home about. The one sole thing I was impressed with in the graphics was the fact that the starship models all have unique designation numbers, and the name of your ship is actually on the ship itself, which can't have been easy to do. There's a vast array of ship designs, a lot of different ships like that have like the nacelles under the dish, like the Reliant, and more traditional Voyager-looking ships and Enterprise-looking ships. But do these designs matter in any way? No. It's really just, the way it works is you design the captain of your ship. And so everyone has kind of a really ludicrous origin story where you're an ensign on some ship that gets attacked by the Borg. The captain gets wasted, and so you're promoted to acting captain all of a sudden. So you resolve the situation, you fight off a Borg cube, and the guy promotes you to lieutenant, and he's like, you know what, you're doing a good job, why don't you stay captain of this ship? And so you're like, all right. But, I don't know, from there, you start to build your character. You kind of have 3 characters, sort of. You have your character, you have your ship, which is really just another version of your character with different inventory. So instead of putting on an armor, a gun, and little accessory slots, your ship is just a second version of you, just with different weapons, different shields, different consoles on the bridge, like you have a really good engineering console. There's nothing standard, you know. You don't get like just a standard Constitution class starship. No. Everyone has has like a modular starship that they just kind of assemble together out of things they looted on other planets. It's kind of silly that way. But to tell you the truth, everyone's ship is kind of the same. You know, every lieutenant ship is the same. Every lieutenant commander ship is the same, just varying slightly in shield recharge rates. You know, what kind of weapon loadouts they have. And from there, you're also assembling your bridge staff. So you've basically got 3 dudes who are your key bridge staff. They don't really contribute anything. It's just another set of modifiers that you're kind of stacking on your ship already. So you could have a tactical guy, you could have an engineering guy, and you can have a scientist guy, or you can have a mix of the 3. And so you level up those guys separately. So those guys all, you know, when you do things, you get experience points, your captaining experience gets captaining experience points, and your bridge staff gets skill points. And so you've got all these builds going on, and you'd think that might be impressive. You might think there's a lot of customizability, but I don't think so. In fact, I think it all kind of blurs together. So the 2 main modes that you're going to experience, I think the big one is the Starship Combat mode. And that's the most video gamey of the sort, where you fly around. Basically, you fly around and you blast stuff. And it plays a lot like Star Trek Armada, only not nearly as good. And the real nuts and bolts of that are, if you played Star Trek Armada, you know the general gist of it. There's 4 shield, there's like 4 shield arcs. Your weapons have a firing arc in front, and you sometimes have aft weapons in back. So, you know, mine had the standard loadout of phasers and photon torpedoes in the front, and a phaser in back. I really wished I had torpedoes in the back, because my usual tactic would be to fly past, strafe them, and then shoot a torpedo at my ass. But you can configure it that way if you want. But I found it really boring. Just because, you know, after a half hour of experiencing this, once you've played that, it's all kind of the same. And I think that's the kind of sameness, like, you know, it's all very been there, done that, and it's been there and done better in the past. So, and the second thing is really just running around ground combat on away missions and shooting other stuff. It's very standard, you know, it's not groundbreaking at all. It wasn't interesting to me at all. And I'm trying to think of a way to describe the ship combat. And I think here's where it gets into, like, you could say, that's fine, it's a standard game, as long as nothing's wrong with it, you know. And I'm trying to think, it just seems kind of silly. It doesn't feel very Star Trek-y. And it's a really weird complaint that I'm bringing up, and I admit that it's weird, that it doesn't feel Star Trek-y. What does that mean, Star Trek-y? Well, let's just talk about it this way. This is a game that, from beginning to end, every facet of it is based on combat. Whether you're fighting Borg, the developments take place. It's a really weird kind of continuity space that they're in, where this takes place after the destruction of Romulus. Romulus. That was in the new Star Trek movie. Romulus explodes because of a supernova, right? But the future hasn't changed. Like, Spock's gone back in time, but apparently we've done the diverging timeline. So Romulus has exploded, and we're just going on with that route, okay? So with Romulus exploded, I didn't read up on all the history, but apparently that destabilized things. The Klingons decided, well, fuck, with the Romulans gone, we'll just go ape shit and attack all our enemies, because, you know, they're weakened now. So they attack the Romulans, they attack the Gorn, they attack the Orions, or whatever you call them. And so the Federation decided they had a problem with that. They filed a protest, and the Klingons are like, well, fuck you guys too. And so the Klingons are at war with the Federation now. So that's basically all you're doing now, is you'll go to your starbase, and there'll be a bunch of dudes shilling missions, and those missions will be one of the following. It'll be patrol this sector, or it'll be... There are storyline missions, and the storyline missions are, by far, the most interesting things, because those are the scripted missions that feel most like Star Trek. But you'll run into times when you have to grind out levels, because I already did all of the missions that my feeble lieutenant could possibly do, and I had to be a lieutenant commander before I could do more missions. So once you've skipped past the story missions, which don't last that long, you have to get some levels. You have to get a better ship, you have to get a better bridge crew, and you have to do like sector patrols. You have to do various missions where you go to point A to point B, and they'll try to spice it up with things like transport an ambassador here, or deliver this cargo here, there's a VIP's got to go here, investigate this sector of space. But really all it boils down to is you go to a sector of space, or an instance, you go into the instance, you fight a bunch of starships, you blow all the starships up, you have to go down to the planet or on some kind of starbase or on some kind of starship. You beam your away team down there. You fight through another instance. You get to the end. You beam up. You usually fight more starships, and then you warp back to starbase. And it's all very wash, rinse, repeat. Every mission I played was essentially the same thing. There weren't even any fetch quests. You know, it wasn't like collect 9 of resource A and bring it to me. There's actually less variety, I found, than in your standard World of Warcraft thing. You know, you could argue that World of Warcraft is very much the same thing, where you get a mission, and that mission basically boils down to go to this forest, kill all these enemies, and then come back. Or, you know, they can spice it up, like, go retrieve this item, but it really translates to go into this cave, kill all the monsters, and bring it back. Fine. But there weren't any fetch quests, it was just nothing interesting. You know what, that's what I mean, there's no innovation in this thing at all. And so, I was actually trying to grind out levels by doing patrols, and immediately you realize that you cannot solo any of this. You can solo like the first 2 training missions, but you had better have some friends, because there is no solo grinding here. You gotta have like at least 2 friends to hope to compete against these ships, because the people I was playing with, well, there were 3 of us, and we were still getting killed on encounters that were basically their level. You know, we weren't really stretching ourselves to really hard sections of space. So, you know, it was really kind of frustrating, because the first mission I get was patrol the Vulcan sector. And I immediately get warned by like, you need help with this. So I was like, really? So I was like, you know, I can handle this, I can do this, because the first missions were easy. So I go in there, I get my ass kicked. There was like 6 ships, and that was just the first wave. And, you know, I go in there, I get my ass kicked, and so I'm like, fine, we got to do this. And so we fight our way through. We go to the system, we blow up everything there. And, you know, they kind of spruce it up by saying like, oh, you have to destroy all these dry docks, because these pirates are assembling ships here, so blow everything up here. So we do that. We leave the system, we go to another system in the patrol sector. And sure enough, it's a ship that's under attack by more pirates. So we fight off the ship that's under attack by pirates. There's more pirates appear, we kill them, fight. And so the ship thanks us, and we go off. And so we go to another system. And that system, there's a ship that's broken down, their warp core is shot. So we got to fight off pirates while they fix the warp core. So we fight the pirates. It's pirate hunting, you know. And this is where I really get frustrated, because it's all the same. And what's even funnier is the patrol missions are basically go to the system and kill everything. And there's so many patrol missions. It doesn't feel like you're doing anything new. It doesn't feel like there's no exploration here. You know, fighting Klingons, fighting Romulans. I haven't fought any Romulans, but I'm guessing you can. Fighting species 2847 or whatever it is. It just doesn't feel like Trek. And what I mean is, it feels so strange to play a Star Trek game, a game about exploration and encountering new things and, you know, meeting new species, things like that, and playing a game that is based almost entirely about warfare. Because that's all you do is you fight. You fight and fight and fight. You don't explore anything. You don't get anything done. And so, you know, you will rack up thousands of dead people. Like, you will destroy, on a routine patrol, you will destroy 6 to 12 starships. How many people is that? How many people have you wholesale slaughtered? It's just kind of funny that how many souls have you reaped in the beta test alone? I couldn't even begin to tell you, like, I am just death, the destroyer of worlds here. My body count, Kirk would just shake his head at my body count. How many, how many Klingon ships did he destroy in his entire career? Not nearly as many as I destroyed before breakfast. You know what I'm saying? And so, I'm not going to strange new worlds. I'm not exploring deep space. In fact, I'm exploring very well-trod sections of space. I've barely left the Sol system. Like, I am no more than 3 light years out from fucking Earth. I'm patrolling Vulcan. And still Vulcan fucking crawls. But, I'm not going strange new worlds. I'm going to Vulcan. I went to Risa, for God's sakes, and there was shit there, too. And am I meeting strange new species? The only strange species I ever saw were the things I didn't know what the fuck they were when I was creating my character. I was like, oh, an Andorian, that's cool, I could be an Andorian or something like that. But that was the strangest thing I ever saw. I saw more strange species just walking around the starbase than I ever fucking did playing Star Trek and bopping around the galaxy. Really, all I was doing was I was fighting Orion pirates, the green dudes, and I never actually saw any green dudes, I just saw their ships. I fought Udine, whatever they are, and I fought Klingons. I fought a lot of fucking Klingons. And by the way, those Klingons are pussies. Did I seek out new strange life forms? No. Did I boldly go where no man has gone before? No. Everyone had pretty much been to where I was going. You know what it is to me? Is it didn't really feel like there was any decision making at work. I wasn't really captaining a ship. I was doing jobs. And so, I don't know. To me, the best Star Trek type games were those adventure games like Judgment Rights and the 25th Anniversary game that actually gave you choices. I mean, you were still doing a job. There was still a plot at work, but it was a well-written plot. You had choices. There were multiple ways to do things. And there was a real feel of interaction with the crew. There was actually some role play at work, if that makes sense. And so I wouldn't call this an online RPG. It's an online shooter. It's basically playing Star Trek Armada online, but kind of an inferior version of it. I would really just rather just play the Star Trek DAC or just make a version of Armada playable online and just focus on making the space combat really exciting, because really the space combat feels really distant and stilted, and that was my other main complaint. It was, even if you were going to make this Star Trek game about combat, fine, let's play that, because there's going to be a lot of other races available. At least they're going to have Klingons. I didn't play the Klingons. I wanted to play a Klingon, but I had to level up to level 6 to play a Klingon, and so I'm bored with it already. 3 days in, I'm bored. I don't want to play anymore. But that was my big complaint. Was like, okay, let's just assume now that we're doing this as a war game. Like it's Star Trek, but we're fighting. It's war. We're war with the Klingons. We're at war with the Romulans. Everybody's fighting everybody. In the far distant future, there's only war. Fine, but the combat seemed really jerky and awkward and stilted. It basically played out like an inferior MMO. Like, it really felt like I've seen other MMOs deal with the combat thing much more fluidly, much more intelligently and dynamically than it did here, because it was just kind of, you had a bunch of Klingons running up with bat lifts and like, and not really fighting. There was no good animations. It was just kind of like the guys with swords would just be like, and the guys who are getting hit, like my guy would be getting his ass whooped with a bat lift, and he'd be sitting there with his phaser like, there was just no ebb and flow with the combat. It didn't feel like combat. It just kind of felt like having these little paper figures kind of bash into each other, and it just wasn't exciting. And the space combat, the music didn't get me interested. It didn't really get your heart pounding, and it didn't really feel like there was anything at stake. It just kind of seemed like numbers being crunched. Your maneuverability didn't really factor into it that much. In fact, I actually considered just stopping my ship completely and just turning, because the maneuverability of it didn't really factor into it, because my ship maneuvered like a fucking cow. I don't know if I'm even making sense, but it just seemed really, really dry, uninvolving, and very untrekky. It just didn't feel like there was much of a story there at all. All right. So, I really wanted to like this. You know what? Seriously? I was so optimistic about this one. I had pretty much cleared out my schedule to play this game. I mean, a lot. I had kind of planned events around the Trek thing, and I'm really, really disappointed. It's not very good. I'm hoping that it gets better, but if the beta was meant to sell me on it, it hasn't. It hasn't at all. And so if you want my initial review of it, it's to stay far, far away. I would not suggest this game. In fact, there are other far better spacey themed games that I would suggest. I mean, the Trek theme is not enough to carry this thing because the game itself is just mediocre. I'm sorry, but it is. I know, you know what the hell of it is? I know I'm going to get heat. I know I'm going to get heat for bashing on a beta. I know I'm going to get heat from people who have already committed themselves to being fans. And I know I'm going to get heat from people who are saying that, like, how can you say it's not Trek? This feels perfectly Trek. This is well-researched. And I can't deny that they've done their best to throw little factoids in there during the loading screens and things like that. Oh, and there are some bugs. I didn't bring up the bugs at first because I was starting to think that you guys would start to hate on me because these are beta bugs that might get fixed. But there were a lot of kind of funny bugs in there, and they probably will get fixed. But what is funny is I think my transporter chief is a pack lead, because whenever I would beam my team up from the surface, I would appear just in open space. Like, my little man would be in space, like, I'd be breathing vacuum, and then all of a sudden, well, my ship would appear and my guy would disappear. Or I'd beam down to the planet, and instead of me beaming down to the planet, it would be a little miniature version of my starship. Like, I was beamed into the form of a starship, and my little ship would be moving around the surface of the planet and jumping up and down. And then all of a sudden, he would turn into my guy. But yeah, it was little bugs like that. Sometimes I was in a group, and that the entire rest of the group was not able to enter the same instance I was, or certain sectors of space were locked out. Things like that. Things I'm sure will be fixed, but they better get them fixed, because it's that kind of thing that really makes the production look clown shoes. But it's not very good. I'm really interested to hear, actually, Angry Joe's take on it, because we talked about it very briefly. I actually asked him if it was okay that I did this vlog describing my initial thoughts on it. He was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. But I really want to see what he has to say about it, because he is able to really distill much more clearly than I can, point by point, and compare them to other MMOs, because he actually plays, I think, a lot more MMOs than I do, and he has. I tend to be more nitpicky and critical about it. What Joe's real strength is he can tell you from a much more approachable viewpoint, whether or not this game is just good or not, whether or not it's fun. And so that's the approach I was trying to make with you guys is, did I have fun playing this game? No, not really. I just really want to hear what Joe, whose opinion I very much respect, just in terms of, he actually kind of grounds me, in terms of, just play this game because it's fun. If you like this game, you would like this game, or how does this game stack up to other really popular games? So he actually is able to compare and contrast these games, I think, much better than I can. So, he introduced me to King Arthur, which I very much like. That was that game that I said I didn't really like Empire Total War, and he was like, yeah, do play King Arthur. I was like, all right, and I played it. It's really good. So I think stay tuned for it. I'm actually probably going to post his Star Trek Online review, because he already did one about. I think he's approaching it from a much more pessimistic viewpoint. He made a video about why Star Trek Online will suck, about before it even came out, like the stuff he didn't like before it even came out. So if anyone had a bad mood coming into that one, it was him. So I really want to see if it met or exceeded his expectations, or was even less than his already low expectations. But I'm going to cut this review right now because there's a few other things I wanted to talk about, but that was me on Star Trek Online.